Well, hello there everyone. Lunar Silver Star Story is an interesting RPG that stood out for being one of the first games to really lean into FMV cutscenes. However, with them being animated instead of campy live action, I think it's helped those cutscenes age a lot better than most, at least visually. This game has been redubbed multiple times, it's insane. But this is also a game that stands out because before the likes of Resident Evil 4 or Skyrim, this was the game that got 87 gajillion re-releases, and thanks to the remaster, it's got 87 gajillion and 3. But there's more to this game than just its cutscenes. It's also got bosses, and Lunar bosses are interesting as this game has bosses generally scaled to your level, meaning they're going to put up a fight no matter what you do, and some of the bosses are really cool, while others are kind of complete dog shit. Anyways, that's enough rambling. Let's begin the ranking of Lunar Silver Star Story's remastered bosses from worst to best. Number 16, the Sewer Dragon. Why does the Sewer Dragon suck so much? Well, it's honestly pretty clear when you're stuck with a party of Alex, Ramus, and Luna, aka Alex, a useless sandbag, and a mediocre healer. I will give credit. The boss does animate what attack he's going to perform, as he'll either be exhaling fire or not. But that's about it for positives, as he has only those two attacks. Fire Press, which does over half your health, and his Bite Attack, which hits almost as hard and has a high chance to poison you. But the real issue is this arena is tiny. That may seem like nothing, given it's a turn-based RPG, but in Lunar, to physically attack an opponent with a sword, like for a regular attack anyways, you have to run up to them and hit them, and this boss spends most of his time out of reach. Alex can hit the dragon with his sword dance skill, but that takes up MP, and after an entire sewer level, you're probably starting to run low on that by this point unless you've known that this boss is coming up and you've been hoarding your starlights. Meanwhile, Luna can't really hit for much damage, and Ramus is Ramus. Calling him useless would be giving him too much credit. These days, I just hoard my starlights up to this point in the game, so I don't really struggle, but this is the only boss I'd consider hard outside of the in-game, and it's not for the right reasons. Number 15, Truffle Troubler. Welcome to the boss of the end of 90s JRPG Gimmick Dungeon trademark. You may wonder, what the hell does that mean, Christian? Well, it means there's an annoying gimmick haphazardly tossed into the dungeon to make it unique. As you're not allowed to bring items into this dungeon, meaning you're relying on just the skills Alex and Luna have, and the limited MP they have. That alone is annoying, but this boss only does two things. An electrifying attack that hits for about 40 HP, and a party-wide attack that hits for about 25 HP. This boss fight will play out the exact same every time, with Alex buffing his attack, and then just spamming sword dance over and over again while Luna spams her healing song. There is no variation that isn't just being foolish, and if you're not sick of Luna going la 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 by this point, you will be by the time this boss fight is done. Not helped by the fact that I really don't like Luna's voice in this new dub. Number 14, Enemy Mobs. Basically, your mandatory fights against enemies that must be won in order to make progress with the story. They're not bad, and some of them can even act as decent story beats, but that's about all there is to these fights. But at the same time, they're not offensive, and they don't annoy me like the two below, and I guess that kind of shows just how bad the Sewer Dragon and the Truffle Troubler are, and the fact that you have to fight those two bosses pretty much back to back is never a good sign. But at least, these fights do allow us a chance to make use of status effect moves. In the first act of the game, at least. Moving on. Number 13, Saline Slimer. The first real boss fight in the game, and an interesting opponent to say the least, as he's your introduction to foes that scale to your level, making over-leveling pretty hard to do in this game. You're also stuck with probably the worst team in the game, with Alex having to carry the useless sandbag Ramus, Luna, who hasn't quite become annoying yet, and Nash, one of my most hated video game characters of all time, and we'll get into that when we get into that. Combat-wise, this boss has 3 attacks: a physical attack that he can perform multiple times in a row, which can hurt a lot, a ranged slime shot that doesn't require him to reposition, and he also has the ability to trap party members in slime for a random number of turns, leaving them unable to act, and this can't be cured off either because it's not a traditional status effect. If it happens to Ramus, who cares, but if it happens to Luna, your healing is shot, and if it happens to Alex or Nash, well, that's gonna really suck, because they're gonna be the ones dealing most of the damage here. Where Alex, is kinda needing to be in top condition to really get things going because the Saline Slimer recovers about 90 HP every single turn. And since his HP is scaled to Alex's level multiplied by 90, this man recovers 10% of his HP every single turn. And I only have one character that can hit for any remotely consistent damage, while the other 3 would be lucky to break the triple digits combined. For positives though, I do like how the boss animates to show his attacks, and the backflipping to show when he's gonna go melee, idling to do his ranged attack, and opening his mouth to perform his trap move. But that's about where the positives end, and I have to mention, we're not even halfway through the list, and we've already exhausted all but 2 of Act 1's bosses. I promise, I like this game guys, but it does not have the strongest of starts. Number 12. Duels. Basically, these are fights where you have a single character to take on a foe, be it Mel again but evil, and Tempest. They're Unga Bunga tests that act as an excuse to show off your skills, and that's okay. Mel is a fight that you're not supposed to win, but you can. Tempest, admittedly, is kind of a joke, but it's cool getting to fight a party member before he joins the party. And Stone Mel acts as a major story beat where Kyle's love for Jessica was strong enough to break a petrification curse that straight up killed everyone else affected by it, leaving Jessica alone and delirious. These fights are story fodder, but they're acceptable story fodder, so they get a pass from me. Number 11. Shadow Spectre. Well, we managed to make it out of Act 1 bosses, but this one isn't too much better. Actually, this boss only has 3 attacks, either Piercing Eyes to nuke the party, Black Bile, which inflicts silence on a party member, or a normal attack he performs 3 times. So he's basically just Saline Slimer again, but he doesn't have animations to show what attack he's going to do, and he has a whole lot more health to make up for his lack of regenerating health. So you may be wondering, why does this fight get higher? Well, for one, no regeneration shenanigans, but more importantly, you actually have a decent party for this boss fight, with characters that are actually useful. Really, in a way, it kinda makes you think of Nioh 2, where the enemies stay more or less the same in the late game, but because your toolkit is better, it makes the late game more fun. And the same sort of argument kind of applies here. Number 10. Vile Crustacean. Doesn't really look like a crustacean to me, but whatever. This boss has some cool attacks, but he insisted on only spamming the vomit and laser eye move throughout the entire fight this time around. I won't count it against him too much. Anyways, this boss stands out because he feels like a serious threat, and he has a pretty cool design that, honestly, if the art style was changed up, it wouldn't really look too out of place in a game like Doom. Now, I'm not the largest fan of the fact that we have a magic-resistant boss fight, where your party is Alex, 2 mages and a healer, and one of those mages is Nash, but Jessica actually does much better damage than you'd think, so it's not as bad as it initially seems to have her throw out some attacks of her own. On top of that, this is the first time really getting to see what Mia is truly capable of, since the last time she was playable was during a 90s JRPG gimmick dungeon trademark. Nash is here too. Either way, Act 2 is pretty sparse with its bosses, but they punch a good deal higher than most of the things from Act 1, and are more comparable to Act 3's better bosses. Plus, with his piercing laser eyes, this is one of the first bosses in the game where positioning actually matters, making him a potentially tricky boss fight. And despite his janky AI, this allows him to claw his way up a few spots higher on the list. Number 9. Royce. Now, we're in the in-game, where the only difficult fights, barring Sewer Dragon, exist, though Royce is difficult for potentially the wrong reasons, because she places you under a curse during her segment of the final dungeon, temporarily turning it into a 90s JRPG gimmick dungeon trademark, where 2 of your party members will randomly be asleep when the battle begins. If she puts both Alex and Mia to sleep, just quit and reload, it's not worth it. Otherwise, this boss fight is basically just a powerful caster of fire magic that's weak to ice, and that's honestly kind of lame for Royce. She was the one out here playing mind games, laying traps on the player with her ability to see into the future. I think what could have been cooler is have her set up attacks to come out a turn or 2 later, so you had to remember what she's going to do. Otherwise, she really just spams fire attacks, including one with her Demon Snake that will probably one-shot anyone it hits other than a buffed Alex or Kyle, and she has a binding attack that's pretty similar to the Saline Slimer, so I guess we're coming full circle there. Honestly though, Royce kinda falls flat as a villain in general. She's one of the 3 big bads of the game, Vacia doesn't count, but pretty much all she does is troll you during the Red Dragon segment of the game, and force you into 2 boss fights and after that, she pretty much just disappears from the plot until the endgame. Here, she shows up to be an asshat twice, then fight with Phaecia, who joined your side, and then shows up for a boss fight in the final dungeon, where she's defeated, has a single line of dialogue, dies, and is never mentioned again. What a lame send-off to the first major antagonist of the game introduced. At least the music here's nice. Number 8, the Ultragoyles. The last boss of Act 1, and it's basically just 4 enemies. Well, okay, to be fair, these Ultragoyles make for a boom or bust style boss fight because they're fast, hit kinda hard, and are the end of a 90s JRPG gimmick dungeon trademark, where you're not allowed to have any weapons equipped. Thankfully, Alex can still use his sword skills without equipment, because this isn't Lunar Dragon Song and Alex isn't absolute garbage. Either way, you're stuck with a party of Alex, Luna, Nash, and Mia, but thankfully Mia gets to shine a bit with her wide arsenal of attacks here. Nash is just going to do the same thing because, well, all he does is spam Thunder Bomb. And overall, it's a simple fight, but it can be hectic and a kind of fun one, working with your limitation instead of being frustrating like another gimmick dungeon. It also acts as a major story beat where Roy stops pretending she isn't evil and Zenobia reveals herself to be the leader of the Vile Tribe. Phaecia is also there, but she's already hinting that she's not wholly on board with this whole being evil shtick. Overall, it's a fun enough boss and a good enough cap-off to the game's first act. Number 7, Nash. Alright, time to get demonetized because, seriously, Nash can go fuck himself. He is one of the most insufferable characters I've ever dealt with in any video game, and if I could have killed him and had Tempest or Lake fill the 5th and final slot of my party, I would. I'm with Kyle on this whole ordeal. He's not only an insufferable asshat with a superiority complex looking down on basically everyone outside of his simping for Mia, and she's too nice to tell him to go kick rocks. He's also a crappy party member, being a mage that can only use thunder spells, which aren't inherently bad, but the game also gives him status effects like they're some big deal. But they're only single target, and most enemies are immune or highly resistant to status effects after the first act, so basically half of his spells, actually more than half because he has 5 status spells and only 3 attack spells, are pretty much worthless or worse versions of whatever Luna had. Meanwhile, his other 3 are a lightning AoE with crappy damage, a lightning screen nuke that does pretty good damage but it's expensive, and his ultimate lightning attack that gets outpaced by a basic attack from Alex or Kyle, and is probably getting outdone by Mia and Jessica as well. Not to mention him being unable to use most magic staffs in the endgame, as it wants to force him down the role of a mage archer hybrid but never commits, so he left as this weak link to the otherwise solid RPG party. So of course, when he inevitably betrays you all, that gets flipped on its head and he can now spam his strongest spells endlessly, forcing you to keep healing and buffing up until his AI decides to be nice. The one positive is his physical attack is scripted to do 1 damage, which is pretty funny. Shows how pathetic he really is. I appreciate the game letting me beat the shit out of Nash for all his BS, but they should have committed and let me dump his ass permanently so he could wallow in self-pity. Seriously, Lake or Tempest would have done just fine as a 5th and final party member. I despise this character so much as my replay has only really intensified that feeling. Number 6, the Black Dragon. The final of the 4 legendary dragons, we get to meet with the Black Dragon, but he's become corrupted and a slave to Galleon. As for the fight itself, well, it's the big cap-off to Act 2 of the game, or Disc 1 if you're playing on the PlayStation 1, as Alex has finally become a Dragon Master, acquiring a big stat boost and some nice drip. The battle can be a tough one, as the Black Dragon has the 2nd highest scaling in the game, only beaten out by the final boss. But the fight is meant to be a major power trip, as this is where you'll see Alex dealing the highest damage numbers of anything in this game, and the boss uses ice, fire, and lightning to attack you, each with slightly different effects like single target, AoE, and screen nuking. So, it does have a decent variety of moves. What I'm not as big of a fan of though is the fact that he flaps his wings to push you back every single time he starts an attack, which really just means your positioning doesn't matter at all in this fight. You should just spam your strongest skills to hit him as hard as you can, as they have infinite range. Overall though, it's still a solid fight to send off the game's 2nd act, but gets a lot of its points from being a satisfying power trip more than being a mechanically complex boss. Number 5, Dragon Master Zoc. The only boss saving Act 1 from a kind of terrible boss roster, Zoc has a self-proclaimed Dragon Master riding his dragon, a Horntoad. This boss telegraphs his attacks well with some nice animations, like Zoc jumping up and down when he's preparing to do a body press, or him holding a fireball when he's going to cast a weak fire spell at you. And by weak fire spell, I mean like 6 or 7 damage. It's an enjoyable fight because it may be kind of a joke boss, but it's not a complete bum in battle, so it gets to be kind of goofy, but also there's still a little bit of challenge, so it feels fun. And it's when we first get Jessica in the party, and she's by far the best character in this game, so some points for that. Overall, it may be simple, but I like this battle quite a bit, and it's cool getting to see a self-proclaimed Dragon Master as a boss fight, and while not as likely, his body press being an AoE does encourage the play of trying to space your party members out a little bit, which is more than any other foe up to this point, so I gotta give him a few extra points there. Number 4, Galleon. The big bad final boss of the game, Galleon in his true form, only makes it to number 4 on the list. Why? Well, let's talk about that. As a positive, he's by far the toughest boss in the game, requiring you to use every tool at your disposal to win, and pay close attention to his animations to know what attack is coming out, because it will be a matter of life and death if you're not careful. But as a negative, I think they overtuned him. He has by far the highest scaling of any boss in the game, which is fine, except he can attack 3 times in a turn with a comedically high crit rate, meaning he could potentially kill 3 party members like that without you being able to do anything. And he's at the end of the longest dungeon in the game with 2 other bosses, so you've already somewhat depleted your rationed resources by the time you get here. And he's the only boss in the entire game capable of using 2 magic attacks in a row, meaning he has all 4 elemental spells of fire, ice, earth, and wind, but he also has dark magic, giving him the ability to insta-kill a party member, do a massive AoE attack, steal health from all party members, throw up a dark barrier, basically giving him an extra 1000 HP, and a dark Kamehameha that you better have Dragon Barrier up, because otherwise he's probably going to hit most of your party members for over 600 damage in a game where you're never going to see the health bar go past 500. So much of this game is kind of a joke that it feels like an overcorrection here. And if you're not prepared, it might be too hard, to the point of oppressive bullshit. And even a winning attempt will likely take you around 20 minutes, which is an eternity for a single-phase boss fight in a PS1 JRPG. And I could do without hearing Keith Silverstein say, "Time to die," every 3 to 5 seconds. Actually, speaking of that, let's talk dubbing real quick, as the remaster featured a new dubbing for both Lunar 1 and Lunar 2 Eternal Blue. Now, Eternal Blue hasn't had a dub since the 90s, so the new voice acting is actually appreciated, but this game already got a modern dub back in 2009, and while I don't think this one is bad, I'm always going to prefer the dub I grew up with, just like how most people prefer John Truitt as their version of Galleon. I like Troy Baker. And I think hearing Yuri Lowenthal, Michelle Ruff, Eden Rigel, and the likes helped with that game. Though it does make me wonder, why not just reuse that dub? But I guess since Galleon and Luna do return in Eternal Blue, they need to get their voice actors back, and yeah, well, I don't think they'd have too hard a time getting Eden Rigel back for one scene. Something tells me Troy Baker is probably too expensive and or too busy to come back to voice Galleon again. Actually, thinking about it, this whole dubbing argument makes me wonder how John Truitt fans felt back in 2009. Lastly, let's talk about story, or more accurately, localization, as the remaster is far more faithful to the Working Designs PS1 localization than the 2009 localization. Probably for the worse, as it makes the game's story feel more like a comedy dub equivalent of a video game, and the character that suffers the worst is Galleon. At times, he's an evil mustache-twirling thespian that's hilarious on screen and steals every scene. At other points, he's a greedy hypocrite that only wants absolute power. At other points, he's a tragic hero willing to commit heinous acts for the good of the world because his friends are too weak to do so, and in his mind, his best friend betrayed him and the world. And at worst of times, he's a freaking pedo, creeping on a 15-year-old girl. You could argue this makes him complex, but to me, it makes his character come off as schizophrenic. And I don't think Schizo Galleon was intentional, but my god, it's both hilarious and sometimes uncomfortable. Especially when I grew up with the 2009 release, which leans more into the tragic hero angle, that makes him increasingly desperate to save the world, no matter what he must sacrifice to do so. Anyways, if you're looking for a challenging final boss, you will find it here, but you might find more than you bargained for, and it'd be like playing a Soulsborne game, but most of the bosses are pinwheel difficulty with maybe an Abyss Watcher or two thrown in, only to get near the end, and suddenly the game slaps you with promised consort we're done. Yes, most of my explanations are made through analogies and comparisons. Welcome to my channel, everybody. Number 3, the Bronze Dogs. The best boss of Act 2 is up next, and also one of its only bosses, because outside of the duels with Tempest and Stonemel, there's an insane drought of boss fights with nothing between the Vile Crustacean near the start of the act and the Black Dragon at the end of the act, with the exception of the Bronze Dogs acting as a sort of oasis in the barren boss desert. And they can be pretty fun because there's 2 bosses, so tactics extend beyond just using your strongest single attack to hit him, and you don't have all the overpowered skills yet. So now you have to juggle both foes, but their scaling isn't completely outrageous, so it's not a super oppressive fight. It can be a bit more challenging than some of the other bosses though. The boss also has some nice animations like flapping their wings when they're going to cast a fireball, or igniting their entire body when they're going to do a dash attack that's effectively a screen nuke. Overall, it serves as a fun mid-game challenge that, while not overly difficult, puts up something of a fair fight, while looking cool and allowing us to use the entire main party in battle for the first time. Even if I detest Nash. Number 2, Magic Emperor Galleon. After Phaecia completely gives up on the whole being evil thing, she holds off Zenobia and Royce to stop them from murdering you, and then we do battle with Magic Emperor Galleon at the top of his mobile fortress. Also, it's kind of weird how his version with the title is weaker than his version that's just his name. To compare to FromSoft once again, it'd be like if Mohg Lord of Blood was weaker than the fight with Mohg in the subterranean shunning grounds in Elden Ring. Anyways, this fight is a lot better because it's not complete overkill with his attacks. Instead, he can swap between powerful magic attacks like fire, water, and earth, as well as wind magic, which can clump your entire party together, making you need to consider repositioning carefully, and just plain beating the crap out of you. On top of that, I love his design, and for his quirks and in hindsight the super obvious betrayal, he does make a really strong entrance when he reveals himself to be the villain, one-shotting the White Dragon Quark before kidnapping Luna, removing her from the story for the rest of the game. Not sure if that's a positive or a negative, to be honest. Both Keith Silverstein and Troy Baker kill it with their performances, but honestly, my favorite reveal is the original with John Truitt.
Galleon, no!
Galleon, yes!
Sass aside, it's a pretty good reveal for an antagonist. He looks cool, he's threatening, despite his borderline schizophrenic writing, and his battle near the assumed climax of the story is a fun one with my favorite boss theme in the game playing here. Number 1, Zenobia. Galleon may have been the final boss, and had more interactions with Alex, but to the party as a whole, he was kinda just the big bad evil guy, not even acknowledging Mia or Nash after the heel turn despite Nash being on his side and his apprentice, while he essentially raised Mia as the closest thing we know she had to a father figure. Zenobia, on the other hand, plays a larger role, capturing Jessica and Mia, forcing Alex and Kyle to fight one another, having monsters flood the major cities like Maribia, taking over the magic capital of Vane and assuming their matriarch's identity, having Alex framed and imprisoned for insurrection, and most importantly killing Mel, one of the 4 legendary heroes as well as Jessica's father, making her the most effective villain of the lot. And we just see her more than the others as well. Galleon mostly only talks to Alex after the heel turn, Royce is barely present in the story after the Bronze Dogs fight, and Phaecia was supposed to take over the faith of the people, inserting herself as the primary religious leader, only to end up genuinely converting to said religion and joining your side by the end of the game. So it falls to Zenobia to get things done. And you know what? Her boss fight is tougher than any before her, but it strikes a good balance, and works fantastically as the penultimate boss of the game, with her being able to fire off dark orbs, punch the crap out of you, change your party members' locations, forcing repositioning. She can use petrification beams, also requiring repositioning, and tying into the narrative since that's how she killed Mel by turning him to stone. And she also fights similar to the Magic Emperor Galleon battle, but with more aggressive attacks and a more diverse moveset instead of just elemental flavored screen nukes. And I appreciate that despite the somewhat campy nature of the story, this fight is taken completely seriously. As Jessica puts it, no more running away, no more stays of execution, you die today. It's a satisfying battle with good music, good setup,
Good atmosphere.
and a strong payoff, making it my favorite boss in the game. And that's all for this video. It was fun revisiting a game I played a couple times as a kid, though upon returning, this game is not challenging in the slightest. For 90% of the game, you can actually auto-battle your way through everything. Not a deal breaker, I still enjoyed it, but admittedly, I'm more looking forward to playing through the sequel Lunar to Eternal Blue, as I've never actually played that game before, but from what I can see, the boss fights seem to be a lot more involved than before, and the game seems to have some optional bosses as well, which is nice. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video. If you want to see more content of varying quality, consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you all next time. Take care, everyone.